Hey, what's up, everybody? Jason Dutch here with Voice from the Underground, the podcast where politics and pop culture collide. Go boom! um, so I've been doing a lot of driving around today, and I really just want to use you guys as an outlet right now to just vent for once. Well, I do that all the time, right? But to vent about what's happening right now. With the election and everything. So um, the question I have is, will recounts matter? All recounts matter, right? Um, will recounts matter? So I'm in my car. I got the camera propped up weirdly, so all this extra space, forgive it. So I'm driving around. I'm listening to conservative radio as I typically do because I like to hear what silliness is being propagated out there. And listen to whoever was filling in for Rush Limbaugh as he's doing his therapy for his illness, and also to Sean Hannity. And yeah, why do I torture myself? I see the comment, but there's a couple things that they say that I think are important talking points for us to talk about with Trump supporters when they complain about this election being, quote, stolen from them, which I do not believe it was stolen from them. And the first one is this. They sit there and they'll talk about places like Wisconsin that had 83% voter turnout, 84%. They'll talk about places in Georgia that had higher voter turnout than normal. They'll talk about places in Pennsylvania that had higher voter turnout than normal, which, by the way, Biden has only won Pennsylvania by about 85%. Mitt Romney lost it with close to 0% of the vote. So Trump actually had about a 16% to 18% anomaly there. Where's the fraud with that? Are you going to tell me it's 18% off? But of course, we don't say that because I don't know. We just don't. We don't point things like that out. But what the assumption is, and I don't think they actually believe this. I think they just say it to rile up their base that doesn't think. But what they'll say is they'll say that, well, it's got to be a problem to look into. And I'm okay with you looking into it, but let's be honest with ourselves. Trump was a polarizing candidate for the Trump supporter and for the Trump detractor. So they brag about the fact that they've got 72 million votes, which is more than they got last time and more than any other Republican candidate has ever gotten. That is true. How many Democrats do you see running around out there talking about there must have been fraudulent Republican votes, which I'm sure there were. I'm sure there were fraudulent Democratic votes. You might even find a couple thousand of them throughout the country. Not as many as you're going to need to flip it. They make this assumption that, well, if there's one, there's 101. And if there's 101, there's 1,000,001. That's stupid. That's like saying if I have $1 in my wallet, I must have $1,000,000 in my wallet. No, that's absurd. So, but think about this. Biden supporters went out to the polls just as enthused, maybe not about the candidate specifically. I'll grant them that. They may not have been enthused about Joe Biden specifically, but they were enthused about getting Trump the fuck out. So why would you be surprised that you'd have 84% voter turnout in a city like Milwaukee or Detroit or Philadelphia or Atlanta that has high proportions of African Americans that perhaps didn't vote last time because they felt disenfranchised by Hillary, so I can understand that, but voted this time? The numbers aren't all that far off from those cities when they voted for Obama. and you have the population growing steadily. So unless Thanos is going to come do a snap, the population is going to continue to grow. Of course it is. So when you have a president who supports police, regardless of the situation, it's okay to support police. But when they do something wrong, you're supposed to say, hey, police, you fucked up. And your fraternity fucked up by covering up. But they don't do that. They draw a blanket across the board and say that every single blue life matters, which Blue Lives Matter, by the way, would not even exist if it weren't for Black Lives Matter. It's a problem what we have with identity politics in general, that when the best defense to identity politics is more identity politics on the other side to contest those identity politics, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have Black Lives Matter in any way. I'm just saying it's expected that you'd get more identity politics as a counter to those identity politics. Identity politics suck, but sometimes they are necessary. But when you disenfranchise these people and you constantly berate African Americans like Don Lemon or Steph Curry, the list goes on and on and on. Aaron Crute, non-voter. Trump's daily bullshit brought me and a lot of other usually non-voters out of the House to vote. Precisely what I'm talking about, Aaron. By the way, Aaron's got a great podcast of his own. So check that out. Hopefully I'm going to get him on our show. So Aaron, post your show here in the notes and I'll add it as a note. But he's exactly correct. You've got people who were polarized, not just by the fucking right. The left is equally able to be polarized as the right wing is. So why is it that you sit there and believe that because you believe you're the silent majority, you have to be the silent majority and that only you can be motivated to come out and vote for patriotism? And by the way, that's something else that really pisses me the fuck off. A patriot, today is Veterans Day. Today we celebrate people who are actually patriots. Now, that doesn't mean that just because you served in the military that you automatically become a patriot. You could be in the military and be a shithole, go home and beat your wife. I don't think you're a patriot. But in general, we're celebrating patriots today. Patriot is not a title that you get to give yourself. A self-proclaimed patriot is not a patriot. That's like saying self-proclaiming yourself a playboy, or I'm self-proclaiming myself a superstar YouTuber. You guys get to do that. I don't. I don't think you are. But you can if you want. I'd appreciate it. But you get the point. Draping myself in an American flag does not make me a patriot. Believing in the ideals of the Constitution of the United States of America and believing that those ideals were more perfect than the founders intended them to be by God's grace, and believing that we have a road to equality. Thank you. Someone just called me a superstar. Mark Phillips, thank you. Checks in the mail. But believing in those principles is what is going to make someone say, hey, that person is very patriotic. In fact, I would say that what Colin Kaepernick did was astonishingly patriotic, because he gave up his job and they called him a fucking America hater. Think about that. All these people who are talking about right now, look at 72 million pissed off Republicans and no cities are burning to the ground. First of all, two-headed answer to this. Kaepernick tried to do it peacefully and you called him a traitor. You did that. So let's look at this like we're on the playground. If you're bullied over and over, you go to the principal. Principal doesn't do dick. Maybe I blame you. So one day you punch the motherfucker in his face after years of bullying. Are you violent? Or did you just feel disenfranchised and feel that your voice wasn't being heard and you're tired of the bullying? And then when the left goes out and Black Lives Matter specifically goes out and because right after Hillary lost, they were all over the streets. I don't remember seeing any cities burning down then. So let's call a spade a spade. Let's make a real equivalency, not a false one. Okay? That the Trump voter is not like the Black Lives Matter protester. The Black Lives Matter protester is tired of decades, if not a century or more, of overt and covert, both oppression and inequality and an unequal access to opportunity. Right? So if you disagree, it's fine, but you're wrong. So the perception is that Black Lives Matter, they call them the militant arm of Antifa for a reason. So when they go out there and they, thank you, Simon Fenn, word up, he says, word up to you, brother. So when they go out there and they shoot tear gas at you and rubber bullets, and they approach you with riot gear, and they tell you, go home, it's too late for you to protest. Well, go fuck yourself. I'm sorry to my fellow white people who get so goddamn uncomfortable with protest. Please let me know how it's okay to protest. Please tell the Black community, look, this is the way that you should protest. You can seriously go fuck yourself with that fucking bullshit. So irritating. And that's what BLM does, especially the political organization BLM. I don't have to agree with everything they say, but the statement is separate. So yeah, when they tell you to stop saying what you're saying, and I'm stopping being a 49ers fan because you put a Black Lives Matter flag over Levi Stadium. Ah, you fucking snowflake. Sit and spin. No wonder why you're not being violent yet, because they're allowing you. And because you are trying to keep the status quo. Black Lives Matter is trying to impact change. Status quo is easier for people to swallow. Because anecdotally, we always think, it's all right. You know, Black people, it is what it is. They're responsible for their own house. In a way, that's true. But in a way, it's not true. They don't want to look at the other side of the coin. They don't want to look at the fact that Black people, Black men specifically, were locked up for shit that white people got off for. But anyway, that's why you haven't seen any violence. And by the way, if I had to guess, I would say you're going to see some. You already had 2 guys try to go to D.C. from Virginia and try to do some terror. You've already had multiple fights at these protests against Biden. People are just so disillusioned by different media channels and different depth of reporting from. Yeah, you're right. But when you turn on conservative radio and all you hear is how this is a socialist takeover of this country and the deep state's behind it, you got to kind of understand a little bit that they are influenced by the media, by OANN, by Fox, specifically by their opinion host Tucker, Hannity, and the blonde chick. What's her name? Ann Coulter? No, Laura Ingraham. Ann Coulter and Laura Ingraham are like clones of each other anyway. But yeah, so of course you're not seeing that. But last but not least, let's say they go and they do a recount, right? Like the Secretary of State in Georgia said they're going to do a by-hand recount of every single state. Great, do it. They're going to do a recount in Wisconsin. Great, do it. Trump campaign has to pay for it. Michigan, I think, fell outside of that. So they're looking at other things there. North Carolina, I don't see the Democrats trying to do a recount there because Democrats are fucking weak as always. They should be doing the exact same thing in North Carolina that the Republicans are doing everywhere else. Because he won by the same margin, Trump, or is going to win by the same margin as Biden did in Pennsylvania and Georgia. Just about. But I don't see anybody clamoring to do a recount in North Carolina. But even if they do the recounts, just watch Alex Jones for a bit. You're really torturing yourself. But I'm going to touch on that in the next 5 minutes before I log off. They go in, they do recounts, right? They certify the election, and assuming that the Republican Party, assuming Biden ends up at 306 electoral votes, assuming that, and this is not a given, I keep saying this, assuming that they're not able to find 37 people who are electors across the country, which they are actively talking about right now, who were supposed to vote for Biden Harris, who end up voting for Trump Pence instead. They need 37 people to flip in states that allow the flip, like Georgia. I'm not saying they'll get all the people, all the electors in Georgia, but they get 2 from there, 2 from California, 2 from Colorado. Colorado's got some damn right-wing districts and a lot of right-wingers in the legislature. They just elected the Lauren Boebert to Congress. She is the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from the right. Precisely the same electoral strategy or campaign strategy. So I don't get how Republicans support this either, Simon F. or Simfen, sorry. But they have been brainwashed, and I use that term lightly, because they're willing for this to happen to them. But they keep hearing how they're being disenfranchised and America's under attack and their faith is under attack. And the left, by the way, doesn't do a very good job of countering that narrative in those Republican spaces. And even when they do, honestly, let's say that tomorrow they certify the election and Biden is elected and they go through and they do the recounts and they find, hey, 135 votes were bad, but this and that. Now, frankly, they're going to try to get rid of legal ballots because they're going to say that they were marked improperly, or they didn't fill in the box all the way, or there was a pencil mark on the outside of the privacy envelope, so we got to throw that vote. They're going to try whatever they can. But let's say that all of that fails. They still won't care. It's still been stolen. The narrative is not going away. And then they'll say, oh, but look at Stacey Abrams dancing around in Georgia saying she's the governor. Look at Hillary Clinton. She still can't get over it. Sorry. But that's not that's 2 people. You don't have people going around with Stacey Abrams in mass saying she should be governor. Now, personally, I think that the election was a little bit sketchy in Georgia in 2018, but I have no choice but to trust the election results, despite the gerrymandering. Give it a shot again next time in 2022. But the point of the matter is nothing is going to convince them. And this is uniformly across the right. I had one Republican say to me the other day, a woman, Hispanic woman who I know well, that, I voted for Trump, but as a person of color and a woman of color who works in corporate America, it is pretty cool to have a woman vice president that's of color. And I kind of want to support her. People like this woman are so few and far between. It's astonishing. And if she voices that opinion at her church or amongst her peers in the party, they'll throw her ass right the fuck out. If she's even got the balls enough to say it. Because she said it to me because she knows that I'll appreciate the comment. But there's nothing that's going to change these people's minds. The election has been stolen from them. America has been stolen from them. So what we have to do is every day after January 21st, Biden's first full day in office, just point out to them, hey, America's still here. January 22nd, America's still here. The 23rd, America's still here. Carrie Teresa, thank you for the comment. Fun fact, whenever Stacey Abrams speaks publicly, she starts with, I'm Stacey Abrams, and I'm not the governor of Georgia. I think she's having some picking on herself there. And that's cool. Donald Trump won't do that, though. He can't lose. He can't. These people don't want to let him. They'll do whatever it takes. So what we got to do is we got to watch our electors. But also, we have to find a way to communicate to these people that we were just as polarized as they were, and we were driven to the polls just like they were. And it wasn't because we hate America, and it wasn't because we love socialism, which, by the way, is not, socialism is not evil. I keep saying that. It's an economic philosophy that has flaws just like capitalism does. But it's not evil. It's not the devil, like Kathy Bates in The Waterboy. Socialism is the devil. No, it's actually not. People are the devil. And remember, aren't you the ones that say guns don't kill people, people kill people? Well, guess what? Economic systems aren't evil. People are evil. People are corrupt, not economic systems. Those are philosophies. So cut your bullshit. It's not Leninist Marxism. It's just regular old socialism embedded into capitalism, like your public park. Right? Thank you. So with that being said, remind them every day of three things. One, America's still here, motherfucker. Nothing's changed in a day, 2 days, 11 days, 66 days, 100 days. Nothing's will have changed. We'll still be free. We'll still have the world's most mighty military. The stock market will go up. I don't know what you're talking about. So if you can clarify that question. Number two, Trump supporters have only been marginalized for, you can make an argument, 4 years, but they did it to themselves. Oh no, I didn't see that. Not a fan of Michael Moore per se, but if it's worth looking into, I will. But when it comes to being marginalized, Black Lives Matter is a movement amplifying the cause of people who have been oppressed since the 1600s. MAGA has been oppressed for 4 years by their own doing. And I would say they've only been oppressed for, what day is today? The 11th? So 8 days. You can't even take 8 days of you can't even take 8 days of oppression. You've been oppressed for 8 days. Yeah. Yes, that is the greatest American hero shirt. Thank you for but the 8 days you've been oppressed. Even if you want to say 4 years. But again, you did this to yourself. You supported these policies. You looked the other way when Trump turned his back on every single biblical principle that you used to hold dear with Jerry Falwell and the fucking moral majority. You turned your back on that. You decided to be a hypocrite with the Supreme Court. Not once, but twice. You did that. So you wonder why people get upset. You wonder why people ran out to the polls when you said in 16, that Merrick Garland can't be on the Supreme Court, and you wait a whole fucking year. Obama didn't fight you because Obama went weak. Sorry. But anyway, RBG died October what? something early in October, the 2nd or the 12th or something. Probably like the 2nd or the 5th. You already got Coney Barrett in. You're a hypocrite. Everyone here heard what you did, and you wonder why they ran to the polls. You threaten to pull us out of NAFTA. You talk about love letters with Kim Jong-un and the president of Brazil and Putin, and you listen to Putin's opinion over our own intelligence agencies. And you wonder why we ran to the polls. Thank you for joining. So anyway, real quick before I go, subscribe to the show on YouTube if you can. It helps us a lot. YouTube.com/voice from the underground podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, any podcast app. Please do subscribe. Again, I'll put that little link there at the bottom for our website. All of our links are here. VFUpodcast.yolasite.com. Support independent media. I try to be honest. I have my bias. My bias is anti-Trump, not necessarily pro-Democrat. The Democrats are fucking weak. But yeah, so please do support the show. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow for the live stream.